Night pressed heavy upon downtown Los Angeles. The storm turned glass towers into dripping silhouettes. Cold rain splattered against deserted sidewalks where neon signs flickered. At a near-empty intersection, a lone voice rose above the storm. A black man in a threadbare coat lifted his arms, eyes raised toward the sky, his damp hair clinging to his temples. His cadence rang with conviction. For what shall it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? The plea echoed across the empty street, spoken as though angels themselves might be listening. No audience stood before him, only rainfall's rhythm and the hum of traffic lights. Yet his words pierced the silence with weight. Waiting at the red light in a sleek black sedan, Alexander West heard the cry. A man of polished steel and towering ambition, he had traded comfort for empire long ago. Yet tonight, alone in the soft leather of his car, he lowered the window an inch. The storm's breath and the preacher's voice slipped inside, tugging an unfamiliar ache in his chest. The light shifted green. Alexander touched the accelerator, eager to outrun the discomfort. Then a shadow darted across the street. A child, small, slight, barefoot, stumbled into the path of his car. Alexander slammed the brakes, tires shrieking on wet pavement. The boy froze in the headlights like a startled bird. At once, the preacher lunged forward, seizing the child in his arms and twisting them both out of danger. They tumbled onto the rain-slick asphalt as the car skidded to a halt, inches away. For a long moment, the storm seemed to hush. Alexander's heart thundered. He flung open the door, stepping into the deluge. The preacher crouched on the pavement, clutching the trembling boy against his chest. Rain streamed over both their faces, mingling with the child's frightened tears. "Are you hurt?" Alexander's voice cracked with urgency. The man lifted his gaze, eyes tired yet steady. "We're all right," he said softly. The boy peered out, shivering violently. His bare feet pressed against cold asphalt, lips quivering as he whispered, "I'm sorry." Alexander felt his throat tighten. Stripping off his tailored jacket, he wrapped it around the boy's narrow shoulders. The fabric darkened in the rain, but the child sighed with gratitude, curling into its warmth. The preacher rose unsteadily, still holding the boy. Older, perhaps in his late 50s, lean from struggle, yet he carried a quiet dignity untouched by hardship. "Thank you," he murmured. "You stopped just in time." Alexander looked around, the deserted street, the glowing pawn shop, the wet night closing in. "You can't stay here. Come." The man hesitated, protective instinct in his eyes. "We don't want to impose." "Please," Alexander urged. "Let me help." "Just for tonight," lightning cracked, painting their figures in stark light, the billionaire, the homeless preacher, and the child who bound them. At last, the man gave a nod. "All right." "Thank you, sir." Alexander opened the car door. The boy clung to the preacher's hand until Alexander crouched gently. "It's all right, son. Just a ride. Somewhere warm." The boy placed his hand in Alexander's, and warmth stirred in the tycoon's chest. As they drove, Alexander glimpsed the child safe in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, he was not driving toward an empty home. Days later, Elijah stood again, weak but healing. A cane steadied his steps, but his spirit glowed brighter than it had in years. In a courthouse bathed in afternoon light, a judge reviewed papers and looked down kindly upon the trio before her. Alexander, firm and resolute. Zion, clutching his hand. Elijah, standing with quiet pride. "The adoption is approved," she declared. Zion gasped, turning to Alexander with a smile that could break the hardest stone. "I'm really yours forever now, Daddy." Alexander knelt, pulling him close. "You always were, son." Elijah rested a hand on Alexander's shoulder, his voice thick with gratitude. "You've gained a son, Alexander." And together, perhaps, a calling. Outside the courthouse, sunlight bathed them as they descended the steps. Plans began to stir in Alexander's mind, not of skyscrapers, but of service. Empty buildings could become shelters. Resources could heal instead of isolate. Zion tugged his sleeve. "Can we help kids like me? The ones without homes?" Alexander looked at him with pride. "Yes, Zion, that's exactly what we'll do." Elijah's eyes shone, lifted skyward. "By grace indeed." The ride through the city was hushed, the storm's ferocity giving way to softer rain. Street lamps glowed against the slick asphalt as Alexander guided the sedan north, his thoughts as unsettled as the weather. In the back seat, the preacher cradled the boy, wrapped in Alexander's jacket, finally asleep from exhaustion. Alexander caught glimpses of them in the rearview mirror. A child asleep in borrowed warmth. A weary man holding him as though nothing else mattered. Something about it made the tycoon's heart constrict. He cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Do you have somewhere to go? Family? A shelter?" The preacher hesitated. Alexander raised a hand. "It's late. The boy needs warmth. So do you." "I have space enough." The older man bowed his head. "God bless you." Alexander said nothing, focusing on the road as he turned into his building's underground garage. Tires echoed as they rolled to a halt. Zayan stirred awake, confused by the silence. His eyes widened at the towering walls and polished floor. Alexander turned in his seat. "We're home." "It's all right, Zayan." The name eased the child's worry. Zayan leaned into the preacher. Alexander stepped out, then crouched beside them. "I'll carry him." The preacher's hand smoothed the boy's damp curls. "We've been wherever roof and mercy can be found. Shelters fill fast on nights like this. Earlier we tried downtown." There was no room. Alexander had expected as much. He tightened his grip on the wheel, the lights of high-rises sliding past his window. Before protest could form, Alexander scooped Zion into his arms. The boy wrapped his arms instinctively around his neck. Not a burden, but a presence. The preacher gathered their few belongings, a thin duffel and a storm-warped Bible. Together, they walked toward the private elevator. The boy stirred, pressing closer. The preacher murmured his name like a lullaby. "Zion." Alexander turned the name over in his mind. It sounded fragile and strong all at once, like something ancient carried into the present. The preacher lifted his gaze. "Sir, Alexander," he corrected. "Alexander." Zion's wide eyes followed the numbers rising. Alexander held him until the doors opened into the penthouse. Lights bloomed, revealing marble, glass, and silence. Alexander laid Zion on a sofa. The boy murmured in sleep, whispering, "Papa?" The preacher rushed over. "I'm here, Zion. We're safe." The preacher's tone held gratitude deeper than words. "You didn't have to stop tonight, but you did. You saved him." Alexander shifted uncomfortably, unused to praise. "I just couldn't leave you there." A small smile tugged at the preacher's tired face. Alexander made a decision. "You'll stay at my place tonight." Alexander brought towels, a robe, and clean clothes. The preacher changed, then sat nearby, unwilling to leave the boy. Alexander dimmed the lights, adjusted the thermostat. The penthouse, once sterile, now held the soft breath of strangers and something more. And as he turned away, one thought remained. He was no longer alone. Morning broke with pale sunlight sliding between glass towers and spilling into Alexander West's penthouse. The storm had passed, leaving the city damp but calmer, as though even Los Angeles had exhaled. In the kitchen, Alexander stood at the marble counter, sleeves rolled up, scrambling eggs with an awkward hand. It was not his usual ritual. His mornings typically began with black coffee, financial reports, and a phone pressed to his ear. Yet here he was, fumbling with butter and skillet, driven by an unfamiliar urge to nourish more than himself. Elijah sat nearby with a borrowed mug of tea, the steam curling upward. His eyes followed Alexander with a kind of amused gratitude. The preacher looked smaller in Alexander's shirt and sweatpants, but warmer, more at ease. "Need a hand?" Elijah asked gently. "I think I've got it," Alexander replied, though hesitation in his voice betrayed how long it had been since he last cooked anything. The aroma filled the kitchen, humble and inviting. Bare footsteps pattered against the polished floor. Zion appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He was dwarfed by the oversized t-shirt Alexander had lent him as pajamas, its hem brushing his knees. He hesitated shyly until Alexander looked up and beckoned. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Alexander said with a small smile. "Come sit." The boy clambered onto a stool at the island. His wide eyes darted to the plate being filled before him. Scrambled eggs, toast, a glass of orange juice. He looked as if the sight itself might be a dream. "This looks really good," he whispered. Alexander placed the plate before him, oddly pleased by the boy's approval. Careful, it's hot. Zion hesitated only a moment before devouring the food with unguarded hunger. Elijah chuckled softly, reminding him to slow down. Alexander watched, an unfamiliar warmth rising in him. When Zion finished, he swung his legs happily, his small hands folded on the counter. He looked up at Alexander. "Thank you, Mr. West. That was the best breakfast ever." Alexander's laugh was quiet but genuine. "You can call me Alex if you like," Zion grinned shyly. Elijah leaned back, sipping his tea. "Looks like you've earned yourself the title of chef." "Beginner's luck," Alexander replied. "Tomorrow it might be cereal," Zion giggled, and the sound filled the penthouse like sunlight slipping into long-locked rooms. In the days that followed, life inside Alexander's home shifted. Where silence once ruled, there was now the clutter of living, the scuff of sneakers on polished floors, the low hum of Elijah singing as he washed dishes, the bright chatter of a child's questions. Alexander, once so rigid in solitude, found himself learning the odd rhythm of companionship. One afternoon, a courier arrived with boxes, clothes, shoes, toys that Alexander had ordered without telling them. Zion opened one to find brand-new sneakers, bright red stripes gleaming. "For me?" the boy asked. "All yours," Alexander said, kneeling on the floor to help Zion tie the laces, pride shining in both their eyes. Night deepened across Los Angeles, the storm long gone but leaving the air heavy with dampness. In the penthouse high above the city, Alexander West turned uneasily in his bed. Sleep did not come easily. His dreams pulled him backward into childhood corridors, where he wandered lost and unheard, calling out for someone who never arrived. He woke with a jolt, chest tight, the room cloaked in shadows. Then he heard it, a voice, low and steady, threading through the stillness. It was a hymn, tender and haunting, rising like incense in the quiet night. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Alexander rose, bare feet touching the cool floor, drawn to the melody. He followed it through the dim corridor. The closer he drew, the more it seemed the voice filled not just the air, but the walls, as though the building itself remembered the song. He entered the living room. A single lamp cast a warm pool of light. On the sofa sat Elijah, holding Zion, who slept soundly. Elijah's lips moved gently over the familiar words. ... that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. The hymn drifted like a blessing. And for a moment, Alexander thought he heard more than one voice, a ghost-like harmony woven through Elijah's tone. But Elijah sang alone. The sound might have been a trick of a sleepless mind or something unseen. Alexander's throat constricted. He stood in silence, watching Zion's chest rise and fall, listening to the song that had outlasted storms and sorrow. Elijah noticed him then. His eyes softened, though he sang to the final note before speaking softly. "Bad dream." "I thought a song might soothe him," Alexander nodded, unable to speak. The hymn had reached something inside him long sealed. Elijah brushed a curl from Zion's forehead. This was his mother's song. "Whenever I sing it, it feels like she's near, watching over him." Alexander's gaze lingered on the boy, quietly moved. In the quiet, he almost believed it, that some fragment of her love hovered still. Together they carried Zion to bed. Elijah steadied the blanket while Alexander lifted the boy into place. Zion stirred but didn't wake, his arms instinctively reaching to embrace whoever held him. "Resting easily in the safety offered?" At the doorway, Alexander paused. "When I listened just now, I could have sworn I heard another voice. Perhaps it was nothing, but it felt real." Elijah's eyes glowed. "Sometimes love echoes where we cannot see. Perhaps you heard it too." Later, back in bed, the hymn followed Alexander, lulling him into sleep, no longer lost. Morning light filled the penthouse, soft and golden, spilling across the glass and marble. The city below stirred into motion, cars threading avenues, vendors setting up their carts, but inside, all seemed calm. Alexander sat at the dining table, reviewing documents. Elijah hummed in the kitchen. Zion sketched on the floor. The atmosphere was peaceful, as though the storm that had first brought them together belonged to another lifetime. Then came the sound of shattering porcelain. Alexander's head shot up. Elijah stood frozen, a dish shattered at his feet. His hand gripped the counter. His face was drained of all color. "Elijah?" Alexander's voice cut through the room. The older man swayed, knees buckling. Before Alexander could rise, he collapsed. "Papa!" Zion's cry pierced the air. He scrambled to Elijah's side, gripping his hand. Alexander rushed over, kneeling beside them. Elijah's breathing was shallow, his skin cold, his eyes fluttering shut. "Stay with me," Alexander urged. Zion sobbed. "Papa, please don't leave me." Alexander steadied his own voice. "It's going to be all right, Zion. I'll call for help." His fingers fumbled for his phone. Middle-aged male, collapsed, shallow breathing, possible pneumonia, possible respiratory. "Send an ambulance immediately." The minutes dragged. Zion clung to Elijah's arm, whispering through tears. Alexander held Elijah's shoulder, heart pounding, fighting helplessness. Sirens rose in the distance. Flashing lights bled through the windows. Paramedics arrived fast, oxygen monitors clipped questions. Respiratory distress. "Severe pneumonia," one muttered as they lifted Elijah onto a stretcher. Zeng cried out and tried to follow. Alexander swept him into his arms, hurrying after. The world blurred again, not with rain, but with fear. The hospital swallowed them. Nurses rushed Elijah through double doors marked ICU. Zion fought in Alexander's arms. "No, I want to go with him." Alexander held him tightly. "They'll take care of him. He's in the best hands now." The boy's sobs tore at him. A doctor appeared minutes later. Her expression was grave. "He has advanced pneumonia, causing respiratory. He's on a ventilator. The next 24 hours will be critical." Zion's small voice broke the silence. "Is he going to die?" The doctor knelt beside him. "He's very sick, but he's fighting and we're doing all we can." Zion nodded, but the tears didn't stop. He buried his face in Alexander's chest, holding him as though he might disappear too. Hoan 9, a hospital administrator, soon approached. "Sir, are you family to the patient? We need to confirm guardianship for the child." Alexander hesitated, looking at the boy trembling in his arms. "I'm his guardian now," he said. "Zion stays with me," the woman raised a brow. "Without legal paperwork." "Then record it," Alexander said firmly. "I'll handle the paperwork. He doesn't leave my side." She nodded and moved on. At the window, Zion pressed his forehead to the glass. "Papa." "Please don't go." Alexander placed a hand on his shoulder. And for the first time, all his power felt useless. Night settled over the hospital. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, the halls echoing with the hush of machines and footsteps. In a waiting alcove, Alexander sat slumped forward, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. Zion slept fitfully beside him, curled beneath Alexander's jacket, still trembling from earlier sobs. Beyond a glass wall, Elijah lay in the ICU, tethered to life by tubes and monitors. Each mechanical hiss and beep was a cruel reminder. Science could sustain the body, but not summon the breath of spirit. Alexander's phone buzzed with reminders, meetings, contracts, markets. He silenced it. None of it mattered now. "I can't lose him," he whispered. "I can't do this alone." Desperation led him to the chapel near the ICU, dim, quiet. It smelled faintly of old candles. He slid into a pew, hunched forward, and let the silence hold him. For years he hadn't prayed. Tonight he tried, awkward, broken, sincere. "God, I don't know if you hear me. I don't know if I deserve it, but please don't take him. Don't take Zion's family. Don't take the only anchor I've found too." His voice cracked. "If there's mercy left, show it now. I'll believe. I'll give everything. Just don't leave us broken." His words dissolved into sobs he hadn't allowed since childhood. Then, small footsteps. Zion stood in the aisle, eyes red, holding a folded drawing. He climbed into Alexander's lap and pressed the picture to his chest. 3 crayon figures beneath a bright sun. "We're a family now," he whispered. "Papa Eli promised." Alexander wrapped Zion tightly in his arms. The drawing crumpled between them like a sacred vow. "You're right," he murmured. "We're a family, and families don't give up." Through the chapel's narrow window, the first pale light of dawn spilled in. It touched their clasped hands, fragile but real, and growing. By morning, the ICU hummed with routine. Nurses checked monitors, doctors murmured over charts. Elijah lay still, his chest rising only because of the ventilator. Alexander and Zion stood at his side. The boy climbed onto a chair, clutching Elijah's limp hand. "Papa, it's me," Zion whispered, tears brimming. "Please come back. I still need you." Alexander placed his hand over both theirs. His voice was steady, though his heart quaked. "Elijah, it's Alexander. You are family now. Zion needs you. I need you too." Zion's chin wobbled, but then he began to sing, "Amazing Grace." Alexander's baritone joined in, raw and unpracticed. As the hymn filled the air, a tear slipped from Elijah's closed eye. His fingers twitched. "Papa!" Zion cried. Monitor shifted, Elijah's heart rate rose, the ventilator registering effort. His eyes fluttered open, full of recognition. Doctors rushed in. "He's responding." Zion sobbed in relief. Alexander laughed through tears. Elijah's cracked lips whispered, "Zion." "Alex, a miracle had come, not from power, but from love refusing to let go." A year later, a once vacant lot in the city brimmed with laughter and song. Painted on its front in bold letters, Amazing Grace Community Center. Inside, families shared hot meals. Children played in safe corners. Volunteers moved with purpose and joy. Alexander worked shoulder to shoulder with them, handing out plates, kneeling to greet children by name. His tailored suits were traded for rolled sleeves and a smile that reached his eyes. Elijah strummed an old guitar in a circle of children, his voice steady and strong, no trace of the illness that once silenced him. The hymn rose again, not as a desperate plea, but as a celebration. Zion, a year older and taller, darted through the crowd with a basket of bread rolls, offering them proudly. He paused by a shy newcomer, pressing 2 rolls into her hands with a grin. "You can take one for later, too." "We have plenty." On the wall hung a framed photograph of Miriam, Zion's mother, her smile radiant. Beneath it a plaque read, "Dedicated to those who taught us the miracle of love." When the meal ended, families spilled into the small garden outside, children chasing one another beneath blooming trees. Zion kicked a ball across the grass, calling for his father and his grandpa Eli to join. Alexander laughed, running forward, Elijah close behind. The 3 of them moved together in the sunlight, no longer fragments from different worlds, but a family bound by choice, by grace, and by love. From the steps of the center, the city stretched beyond, a city subtly changed, for even here in its busiest heart, hope had taken root. In the end, wealth did not heal. Towers of glass and ledgers of gold could not breathe life into weary lungs or calm the fears of a child. What saved them was far simpler, yet infinitely greater. A man who had everything discovered what it meant to give himself away. A preacher who had nothing offered a faith that would not bend. And a child, small yet steadfast, bound them together with the unshakable thread of love. Through storm and sickness, through doubt and despair, it was compassion that carried them. When reason failed, a hymn arose. When fear whispered of endings, love answered with beginnings. The miracle was not in the machines that kept Elijah alive, nor in the fortune that Alexander had built. It was in a boy's trembling song, in a whispered prayer, in the choice to say, "You are mine, and I will not let you go." Miracles live there in the small, unyielding acts of love that defy logic and outlast despair. They live in every hand extended, every heart opened, every soul willing to believe that compassion is stronger than power, stronger than loneliness, stronger even than death's shadow. The greatest legacy is not measured in wealth, but in love, amazing grace. How sweet the sound.